Okay, so in this video we're going to get you used to Marvelous Designer and get you working up and away really quickly. So we've got this vest model we're going to make. It's not complicated, but I've got a little few techniques which might help you along the way. And I mean, from small acorns, great things grow, and you can be doing all sorts of things by the time you've done this thing. So yes, let's get on with it. So in the next section we'll start off with this model. Whoops, that's me knocking my mouse over. Yes, so I'll talk to you when we start in the next section. Okay, so let's get started, and I'm going to load the male avatar first. So under the avatar folder in your library palette, I'm just going to pick first of all the avatar, male avatar 2, and we'll pick one of these chaps out here. Okay, so I'm starting with the male for the very simple reason that it's much easier to make patterns for males than it is for females. It's the curves, they can cause issues, and while you're getting used to it, it's good to take out a few complications. Okay, so let's have a look at this then. So just center this up here. Whoops, there we go. And what we're going to do is start with a polygon. So with this internal line polygon option, sorry, not that option, with this polygon option, we're just going to draw out a quarter of our pattern. So we have all sorts of options for mirroring and unfolding and so on and so forth. So I've no need to do everything in one go. So I'll start where I want it to finish, which is somewhere down here. So left click and then up to the neckline. If you want to constrain your pointer, you can press the shift key and it will constrain it to these 45-degree angle segments. So let's draw up to somewhere around there, and then across to the shoulder, and then just do under the arm. You'll notice I'm going a bit further than the avatar looks, and that's because I need extra material to go around the body. When I first started, I found that I was drawing patterns very tight to the avatar and ending up with not enough material. So you just have to add a little bit of extra. So let's draw those down then, and down to the bottom. And I've not got quite got that level, but I'll just double click on this end point and it will create my pattern. I'm just going to turn off my mesh view there, and then to grab this point, and you'll see when you get level with another element, the line turns pink, so it's level now. So I can just drop that and we're done. Okay, so that's a very basic front piece, but you need to start somewhere. So I'm going to add a curve to this line so that it brings in that and can curve around the arm quite nicely. So let's go to edit curvature, or the C key, and then just click and grab that line and move it inwards. There we go. And similarly on the neckline, I'm going to do much the same. And I think I need to come down a little bit there. I think I may have gone a bit high. So let's go to edit pattern again, or the Z key, and then grab that and just pull it down. Okay. You'll notice because I've put a curve on here, I've got an extra little handle here now, which I won't have down here or here, and that's my curve handle. So I can grab that and adjust my curve a little. There we go. It's just to make it a little bit more neck shaped. Okay, so that's our basic pattern, and what we'll do now is mirror and unfold this. Now MD has a very handy tool whereby it will allow symmetry, and it will maintain it, so that if I make a change on one side, it will reflect on the other side of the pattern. So let's click on our center line and then right click and unfold symmetric editing. So now if I do that and I grab a point and move it, the other side moves at the same time. Lovely time saver, because a lot of the time you really don't don't want to be editing curves and such like that, are complicated. So for this one, for example, if I want to edit it, if it's not right first time, which it rarely is, I can always make an adjustment and the other side will reflect the change. Okay, so that's our front piece, very unexciting, and I'm just going to move it away a little bit and then we'll copy and paste it to form our back piece. Just a prototype for the back piece. The back piece will be slightly different, but we have to start somewhere. So it's right click, copy, and right click, mirror paste, and then pop that down just somewhere to the side, and you'll see it comes over the, just to the side of the pattern. Depending upon where you paste here, depends upon where it will appear in 3D space. There's a bit of a knack to it, which I'm not entirely sure I got yet, but we'll see as we go along. Okay, so that's drawing out our basic pattern pieces, but now we need to fit them to the avatar and sew them together, and we'll do that in the next section. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so everything's a little bit difficult to see at the moment because there's this very white person. So let's turn his colour on by going to the surface properties for the avatar and clicking the coloured one. There we go. So let's rearrange these first. So you've got two choices. You can move with the manipulator. So if you click on a piece, it will give you this manipulator, and I have my gizmo, as it's called, set to world units, a world space. So if you've got it on the screen, it might look a bit like that, which is I find difficult to use. So go to preferences, gizmo, and go to local or world. There we go. So I'm going to move that to the back because that's where it's going to be, and then rotate it around. There we go. Perhaps move it a little closer, and then grab the first one and move that closer. So that's option number one, and a lot of people like to do it that way, and that's fine. But there is another option. Your avatar has arrangement points, which are points on the avatar's body where you could arrange a pattern, but these bounding points or arrangement points are connected to bounding volumes, and those bounding volumes are like cylinders around your model, and it adds a little extra wrap to it. So let me just move this away, and I'll move this one away as well, and then we'll go and turn on the arrangement points. So on this avatar options bit here, the second in is arrangement points, and note the shortcut key there, sorry, tongue-tied there, Shift F. It's quite handy just to know Shift F to turn them on and off. So let's turn them on, and you'll notice there's all these little blue dots all around our chap here, and you select your pattern and then click on the dot you want to use to arrange. So there you go, you see that's arranged in and curved around a little bit, and I'll select the corresponding one for the back, and that just, for me, it helps it kind of come together and get the edges that are going to sew together closer together, and start the wrap off. But it's up to you, whichever you use. So I'm going to press Shift and F to turn those off again, and then we're going to sew it together. So now it's arranged, I know exactly which edges need to sew together, From the 2D, you don't necessarily know. There are good reasons to use the 2D view to sew, and there are good reasons to use the 3D view. In this case, the 3D view is a good place. So let me go to select one of these icons up here. We have the free sew tool, and we have the segment sewing, and we have the editor. We're going to use segment sewing for this. So what we do is point and click at the edge we want to start to sew, and then point and click at the edge we want to sew to. There we go. You'll think about it for a moment and then sew them up, and you'll get these lines indicating that there's a sew between them. And you'll notice it's done the same on the other side, and that's because we have symmetric editing on. It knows what side's what and what is sewn as to what, so it can do it for you. Another little handy hint. So, and then we'll sew the shoulder pieces together. You'll note that I clicked there, but it didn't actually work because I clicked too far away. So it yeah, didn't take. So you have to click very close to the line for it to properly select. There we go. Another thing to watch out for is getting reversed sewing. So if I click on this one here and then go over to the other side and click on that one there, you'll see that these lines are crossed. So the sewing is reversed. It's going to kind of twist everything around and try and pull it together. Again, there are good reasons to do that on occasion, but this isn't one of them. If you do that, you can either just undo and redo it, or go to the edit sewing, select on the line, right click and reverse sewing, and it will fix it up for you. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So everything's prepped and ready, and all we need to do now is simulate. So here we have the simulation button. The shortcut is the space bar, so you can either just press the simulation button or hit the space bar to stop it again. So it's space to start, space to stop. Essentially, while this is orangey and active, the simulation is running, and you can go in and manipulate your garment as you want. Okay, so next then, what we'll do is we'll adjust this pattern. We want a kind of bit of a deeper neckline. Maybe you want to adjust the arms a little, but generally speaking I think it's looking not too bad. Okay, so we'll do that in the next section, and I'll talk to you then. Okay, so we're going to adjust the shape and fit of this, and first of all we're going to just have a quick look at the heat map, or rather the tension and pressure points. This third icon up here will allow us to look at the garment fit, and if we turn the strain map on, you'll see that we have a little temperature gauge up here, and on our avatar we have similarly corresponding points. So where it's blue, you know, it's loose, it's good. Where it's sort of heading for orange and red, it's a bit tight. So we can adjust our general fit just to accommodate that for the moment. And our problem point at the moment is up around the neck, and that's because I haven't made these long enough. So what I'm going to do is select both points up here. So I'll select one and then shift and select another, or both edges rather, and I'm just going to move them up ever so slightly, and then I'll press space to let it sim, and we'll see how it looks. So in terms of the pressure map, it's much better, but it's not fitting so well. So I'm just going to pull it around a little bit so that it settles and gets where we want it to. So yeah, it's better, but it's not perfect. But we don't have to move both sides to do that. So this piece I think is too far back. We want this line to be probably somewhere around the middle of his shoulder, and we want this line to be there as well. So actually what I want to do is grab this line and perhaps move it back to where it was, and to actually relieve the strain I want to make this line even further up. I keep saying longer, I don't really mean that, sorry. And then I'll press space and let that sim, and we're starting to get there, but we need to make some other adjustments to counter our changes. Generally speaking, you make a change somewhere, you know, in isolation, but you know, changes are never in isolation in these things. They always have some sort of consequence elsewhere, whether it's major or minor. Rather depends upon the change, but yeah, there will be differences. So we still have a little bit of tension here, so I'm going to grab this point and just move it up a little bit more, this edge. There we go. Now I can see that I don't have any kind of red or warm colours up in that neck area. Now don't be concerned that, you know, this might be, you know, seemingly too low. We can still bring this middle point back up to fix that. And as I do that, as I said, I made a change in a curved line. It's had an effect. I just need to grab my lines here, my curve lines, to adjust my curve back to where I need it to be. Okay, so that's adjusted the fit a bit, and I can see that I'm all in the good area. The only place I'm not actually is right down the bottom here, but I'm not too fussed about that. That's something that I think it will cope with. I'll be getting some nice kind of wrinkles around the waist. Let me just turn the heat map off. You know, it's starting to, you know, look like a tank top or vest if you happen to be from the UK. Okay, right, so I said we were going to pull this down, and we are. So let's focus on the front piece, and I'm going to grab that point and move it down. And then press space, and that kind of looks alright, but if you look up here, I've got it kind of bowing away from this point, and I don't want it to be. So I'm just going to grab this handle and straighten that up a bit. And it's still bowing a little, but not so much, and that's because this line is very long. Now, sometimes you get a case where you can't control the curve with just 2 points. You have to add more, and in the next video we're going to look at curve points and how we can use them to get the curves we want in the places we want, and in our case to get rid of this little bow here. Okay, so I will talk to you in the next section. Okay, so curve points. If I click on this line and right click, we should be able to delete all curve points. And while there weren't actually any curve points in there, what that means is delete the curve. And now we get this V, but what we can do is in our tools here we can pick up edit curve point, and anywhere I click on this line it's going to click a point and allow me to put out a curve, and I can add as many of these as I like in here to really control what's going on. So let me just undo those. So and that one, I'm going to curve up here, so this curve is coming downwards, and then we can put another curve here to bring it down to a point, bring it down to, you know, a nice shape. And then if I click on this point and move it, I can adjust it so that it's going straight down, coming down to a V down here. Now, part of the disadvantage of this is if I go to edit pattern I no longer have my curve handles to use. I have to control it with those curve points. So I tend to pick and choose where I use it. In this case, I think I have to, because getting that curve right is kind of important. But you know, if I can make do with a simple curve, I will do. Okay, so with that done, let's just press space to have it resim, because every time you change a pattern, it will remesh itself, and then you know you have to kind of refit it to get it going. Okay, so what else do we want to do? I'll start a new section now, because that curve points one I think can stand on its own. What we want to do is fit the arms properly, and also have this curve where the front and back meet be nice and smooth. It's a bit jagged at the moment, even though you know we're at a low resolution at the minute. I can see that even if we're at a higher resolution, it would be, you know, quite abrupt, shall we say. Okay, so we'll do that in the next section. Okay, so one very, very useful aspect of MD, or a function in MD, is you can match lines together. So if I select two lines that sew together, which will be this one, and then right click on one of the lines, I can use match up, and I'm going to match up to start, and you'll see it brings it in and pastes it over, or rather places it over where it would actually look if it were one pattern piece. And now I can adjust these things to, you know, make them match up better. So you notice that this goes straight up as we made it, and this then immediately veers off one direction. What I want to do is just grab this point, grab this curve point or curve handle until it's a little bit better. That's better. So you see it goes straight up, and it continues straight up, and then it curves around. And if I press space, I hope we'll be able to see that. Yes. Quite difficult to see, but I did see it. That the kind of the pattern follow on there didn't, you know, go too crazy as it went round the neck. And again, another reason to do that is when we cut in the kind of hems and seams and things, that will make life much easier. Another issue here is this point. See this? You know, one of them is, you know, pretty straight, and the other one is also pretty straight, but they're just angled enough to be awkward. So let me go to edit pattern again, and I'm going to grab both those. No, apparently I'm going to grab one of them. So I'll grab one and pull it outwards a little bit, and then I'll grab the other one and just bring it back on top, so that this line is a little straighter. There we go. Similarly, if you have problems at the edges, you can do the same for that. So for these two, for example, would match up. For right click and match up to start, I can see that my lines aren't straight, even though I tried. They're also a different distance, a different size. So I'm just going to drag that down to there. There we go. And then for this one, I'm going to align those points. So let's just grab these two here, right click and align, and we want those to align to the middle. No, we don't. I always get it wrong, sorry. Right click, align to center, and now they're perfectly straight. You don't always want a perfectly straight one, but in this case I do. So I'm going to do the same for those as well. And it will have done it for the other side 2 because we're on symmetric sewing. Okay, so I'm going to line this one up and this one up now. Align and match up to center, and then just move this to one side. Just going to straighten this up actually. There we go. And now we can press space and it will resim. And I have a feeling I might have loosened up my tension down there, so let's just put the heat map on. And yeah, it was orange previously, almost exclusively, and now it's mostly yellow, which is better. Not as tense, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so we've got a little bit of tension up here. I think we can relieve that. Yep. Okay, so next then is the arm fit. The arm fit, you'll see as it's going over there, it's all kind of puffing out a bit and not, not too good. And that's down to line lengths and a few other bits, and sometimes the influence of other pattern pieces on where we are. So we're going to have a look at tightening those up in the next one. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's have a look at our line lengths. So if you go to the transfer as the edit pattern tool, or use the Z key and select on an edge, it will tell you how long it is in the 2D view, but it will also tell you how long it is in the 3D view. So you can see, whether the act of sewing things together and it colliding with the body is pulling it and stretching it. So this one is, but not very much. Let's check the front one. Yeah, again, this is, but not very much. And we can adjust that. We can make it look much nicer. Now, one of the techniques I use is elastic. So you might think, well, elastic just shrinks things. Well, the elastic technology within Marvelous Designer will shrink things. It will also grow things, but it will also keep them exactly where they should be, or try to anyway. So for this I need the simulation to definitely be off, and then I can turn elastic on. Now the reason I leave it off is because if it's on, the default is 80 and it will immediately shrink your design, and that can just mess it up basically. So I turn the sim off, then elastic on, and then I adjust the ratio. Now the ratio is how much it's going to shrink or grow the line. So at 50%, for example, or a ratio of 50, it will try and make the line half as long. At 80% as long, 150, 1.5 times as long, and at 2 times as long. And there are good uses for all of them. But what we want is it to be set to 100. We want to keep it the length that we set it at. So if I set that to 100 and then run the sim, you'll see that it tightens up a little bit. It hasn't quite worked on our shoulder here, but it has improved it ever so slightly. So what can we do to improve our shoulder here? Well, we need to shorten this line. The line is too long. If I click on this pattern piece, actually it will it will add a blue dot, and then there will be a corresponding blue dot in the other side. Now what we can do is move this. So if I move that down ever so slightly, my line is going to get shorter. So if I then press space, you'll see the combination of that with the elastic has really tightened it up. So now it's going over the shoulder and it's going around and under the arm very nicely indeed. There we go. Okay, so that sorted that a little bit out. So I think that's enough of, you know, pattern fitting and adjusting and messing about. What we'll do in the next few videos is we'll have a look at making it, how can I put it, look a bit better, a bit more realistic. We'll add some seams and some thickness in certain places to give it a much nicer, a much better look. Okay, so I will talk to you in the next bit. Okay, so I just noticed that I was foolish earlier. These 2 points I aligned when my pattern was on the skew, so they didn't align, or didn't align as I wanted them to. So I'm just going to actually grab this bottom point and bring it over until I get that little pink line. There we go. And now it's all straightened up again. There we go, lovely. Okay, so adding some edges and thickness. We'll do it on the bottom to start with because it's the easiest place to do it, and then we'll repeat the process elsewhere. So with the edit pattern tool, with the Z key, I'm going to select on both these lines and then right click and offset as internal line, and in this case I'm going to give it quite a thick edge so it's, you know, quite visible. So I'm going to enter 10 millimeters in distance, and I'm going to click the extend option. And what that does is, if the offset offsets the line but it doesn't quite meet the edge, it just pushes the edge out a little bit so it intersects with the edge of the pattern. So let's click OK there, and then with that done and both lines still selected, I'm going to right click and cut and sew. There we go, and then I'll press space and you should see barely anything happens. But we do have a separate piece down here now which we can work with to get our edge hem. So let's zoom in there, and on edit pattern I seem to have a tool active which I don't really know about, so I'm going to just press escape. Actually no, I'm going to go to, yeah, I picked the wrong one. Oh, I need this one, the transform pattern now. So if I select both pieces again, I can copy and paste these in place. So what I want to do is copy and paste them so they are exactly in the same place as the original pieces. And we can use something called clone over. So if I right click here and go to layer clone over, it will create me a new pattern and I can drop it into the 2D view and it will add it over the top. Now what that does is actually sews it to itself, which is okay, but I don't like the way it does it, so I redo it. So then I go to the sew tools, or the edit sew, which is B, select the line it's created, or the sew line it's created, and it's created one all the way around, and that's one of the reasons I don't like it. And let's select the other one as well, and I'm going to delete them. And now we're going to sew it back up manually. So now I'm in the 2D view. You can use the 3D view, but I think the 2D is good for this. So I'm going to click the top one here, which corresponds with the top one, and the bottom, which corresponds with the bottom. And that will do this side, and then we'll do the same on the other side. Oh, I've got overlapping sewing seams. That's because it's the wrong one. Foolish man. There we go, and that's done the back. Now what it hasn't done is sewn it to itself. So what I need to do is sew it across so that the ends are sewn to each other. In the layer clone over, it sews to the underlying piece the whole way around, and again I didn't want that, so I want it to sew to the hem going right the way around. So let's have a look and press space, and I promise you, this won't be very impressive. We need to do some things to make it slightly more impressive. Okay, so space, and there we go. Nothing. It kind of disappears, but there's a good reason for that. So I'm going to switch to like a mesh view. So if you go to mesh view, you can see your underlying mesh, and in both pieces there is actually nothing going on. There's no kind of not enough geometry in it for there to be kind of a bowing and a bending. So what we need to do is add a little. Now we could just increase the particle distance, but that's a little bit hammer, to crack a nut. So what we can do otherwise is, with the edit pattern tool, with Z, I can select on my top edge here and right click and offset as internal line. And this time I'm not going to use 10mm because that's too much. I'm going to use 1mm, and I'm going to give it 2 offsets. So you'll see down here I've got 2 little red lines there appearing, and I could do the same for the bottom. So it's right click, offset as internal line. It's retained the last ones I used, so I'll just click OK. And then we can do that on the back as well. You can select them both at the same time and click OK. There we go. So these lines are essentially putting an edge into your geometry. So now it's got the opportunity to actually bend. So if I press space now, you'll see that it complains a bit to start with, which it generally does, but eventually it will work its way out. One thing that we can do to make that a little bit better is use our layers. So and this is like an interim solution. It's not something you would use constantly or to the end of the project, but what we can do is set a layer. So as by default all of our patterns are on layer 0, but if I set a pattern on layer 1, it tells the computer that I want this to be above everything, or above everything with a lower number. So if I set this to 1 with those 2 patterns selected, and I'm just going to select the top pattern to make sure it's not copied over. It hasn't. There we go. So this is now set to layer 1, as is this one, and this one is, need to get a bit closer for that, is also set to layer 1. And when I press space now, you'll see it just sorts itself out. There we go. And we have quite a nice thick edge. There's one other thing I like to do on here, and that's down to my 3D-ness. I'll just hide the avatar here with the avatar display options. The first option will hide it. If I select the pieces I want in the 3D view, I can flip their normal. So right click, flip normal, and now all the normals are pointing in a direction that I would like them to be, as opposed to just how MD likes them. Okay, so that's a nice edge, and what we'll do in the next couple of videos is do the same for the arms and the neck. It is essentially the same process, but on a curved edge there can be a couple of things to look out for. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so next we'll do the sleeve pieces. So I'm going to select my 2 that correspond, which are these 2, and then right click, offset as internal line, and I want 10mm and 1 offset. Extend of course, and then OK. Right, so with those still selected, I'm going to right click, cut and sew, But then, and this will make my life easier later, I'm going to select these two pieces and delete them. There we go. So now we need to copy these or overlay them. So actually, to make, let's do this now. So where are we? Layer, clone, over, and then I'll just click in the viewport to put it somewhere. Let's make that one a little bit closer to there, and this one a little bit closer to there. Right, so now we need to sorry, I'm having a senior moment. I'm going to move these up and away because what I want to do is select all of the stitching on those two pieces and delete them, and that's much easier if I'm up there. So we'll use the edit tool here, the sewing edit, and then left click, drag a box over them both, and then delete. And then we need to sew them back up again, and for that we'll grab these bottom pieces and move them closer just to make it easier. Right, so on one of our edges here, it's made up of multiple edges and points, so I could segment sew each of them, but it will take time. So for that we're going to use the free sew, and that's this one here. If I pointed it long enough, yes, that's the M key. So all we do is click on the first point and then just draw our line till we get to where we want to finish, and left click again, and then the same on the other side. There we go. And then for the outer one, because it's a single line, I'm just going to connect them together. Now we need to do the same on the other side. So I'm going to use my free sew tool on one side, so left click at the beginning and left click at the end, and then the same on the piece we want to sew to, and then we'll just use our segment sew for the other one. Okay, so all that's left now is to sew the pieces together. So let's move these over. So it's the outer pieces that aren't sewn, so let's sew those up. So it's from this side to this side, and from this one to this one. There we go. And last of all, we need to add our offset lines. So you'll notice that these two are joined together, and these two are as well. So if I offset as internal line 1mm, 2 offsets, and click OK, it does it on the inner as well, and I'm not really averse to that. That's okay, but you can delete these inner ones. So these outer ones are a little bit harder because I'm going to have to select each of these edges on their own, and then right click and offset as internal line, 1mm, 2 offsets. There we go, and the same on this one. Right click, offset as internal line, 1mm, 2 offsets. Okay, so that should all be done now. So let's press the space bar and see how we get on. And yeah, there we go, that's nice. So part of the reason I deleted these two bits was because it's a bit off and on, but generally speaking a lot of that doesn't replicate, even though you think it should. So what I do is I do one side, and then we can select all those pieces, right click and copy, and then right click and mirror paste. I'll just paste them off to one side there. Now you'll see that they don't really appear, and that's because they're hidden in there somewhere. So I'm just going to turn the avatar off and then click on them and move them to somewhere close to where I want to be. That's it. Let me just make sure I've got the sewing lines active. I do. So the last remaining thing is to sew it back to itself, because there is no sew line there. So I'm going to select the top bits and just hide them for the moment. So right click and hide those patterns, and then we can figure out which ones need sewing where. So whoops, let me select, get in and select it. There we go. It's this one here. It's going to go to this one here. So let's use the free sew tool and reconnect that back up again, and then this one will sew to that one, and you should see that the lines are all appearing now, and that's good. Okay, so right click and show all patterns, and then press space and it will sew itself up. So now we've got our edges on sleeves, and that's good. Very nice. You'll notice that you don't have to have the avatar visible for this to work. It's there, it's working in the simulation, you just can't see it. And the shortcut for that is, I believe, Shift A to bring him back in again. Okay, so next video we'll do the neck, and then I think we'll move on to some more fancy stuff. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's deal with the neck now. So once again, I'll select my two edges, right click and offset as internal line, and we're back to 10mm and one offset, and click OK. That finish, and then right click, cut and sew. Now we've only got kind of one piece to deal with this time, so let's just pop those two up a little bit and look to get them into a spot where we can deal with them. Okay, one thing that would be helpful here is if these kind of matched up to their own pieces. So I'm going to select these two lines and match them up. They're not quite right because one of them is a little bit more skewiff than the other, but I'm just going to rotate it around, and it's going to help me when I need to sew them to, sew them to themselves. Right, so these bits we need to clone. So I've selected them both, right click, layer clone over, and I'll pop those up there, and then we select all of the sewing on that one and delete it out, and then pop it back in again. Now this looks like it's going to be a lot of free sewing, so let's get started. Whoops, sorry, I misclicked there. Start that again. So if you do misclick, escape will get you back in where you need to be. There we go. Let's just get those sewn up. Might need to zoom in a little bit just to make sure. There we go, and we've got our last bit here. There. And now, because I've arranged them quite nicely, I can just segment sew these two together. There we go. Now it should be good, except we haven't put our lines in. So I'm going to select these a bit at a time. Let's do these two, they're easy. So offset as internal line, 1mm, two offsets, and OK. And then we'll do the same for these slightly more fiddly ones. So right click, offset as internal line. There we go. And we'll do just this last one down the bottom. Did I move that? That looked like I moved it. Let me undo. Yes, I did. There we go. Control Z to undo. So right click, offset as internal line. Okay. So press space, let that sim, and there we've got our nice thick edge over the top of it. Okay, so that's popped the trims on. It takes a little bit of, it's a little bit fiddly, it takes a little bit of time, but it does add a dimension to your clothing, because clothing's not paper thin, and let's just turn on this better rendering option up here, just to have a nicer look at how it fits together. Yeah, we've got a bit of occlusion into our render viewport now, and that's much nicer. Actually, let me select the fabric up here from the fabric panel, and I'm just going to find where my roughness is and increase it a little bit so I lose some of that reflective kind of sheen, which kind of makes it difficult to see. Okay, so next then we're going to start to work on materials. We can add some stitches in, and yeah, see where we go from there really. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so I've forgotten to flip my normal, so I'll just do a quick section on that. I'm going to hide the avatar because it will make life easier to select, and go inside and select my inner trim pieces. Whoops, if I can. There we go, and just right click on that and flip normal. There we go. Now if I get any views, any view from whatever render angle I'm using, or things in an external render at least, I'm going to get, the right kind of view. I understand that there are some renderers that, render the normals quite literally. If they're pointing in that direction, that's where they'll do them, so you won't see it. So I'm just going to flip these over so that we do see them regardless of where we go. Okay, and right click and flip normal. Okay, so yes, now we're ready to add some material detail and so on and so forth. So we'll do that in just a few moments. Okay, so next we're going to put some materials on here, and I'm going to use the substance for this. So in this little substance folder in your library, you'll have some presets. You can add additional substances to this, but this is what we've got to work with. So what have we got? We've got a denim, a fabric, a kind of check, and all sorts of things. And I think t-shirt wise, I might go for this fleck twill. So don't worry that it's blue, it's a substance. We can change parameters within it. So I'm just going to drag and drop that over our fabric here, and that will update its parameters. And you'll see we've got a grain, we've got a direction, and it looks good, but it also looks too big. So underneath our material now, we've got a substance and all sorts of options underneath it. So we've got our texture repeat, which I'm going to leave as is, and reflection, custom properties, channels, techie parameters, and transforms. The first thing I'm going to do is go to transform, and we're going to lock the aspect ratio, and I can take this width and open it up, and it will give me a percentage. So what I'm going to do is pop this to 50%, and you'll see that makes it much smaller and a much finer grain. We can also rotate it if you wish. If you wanted the grain to go up and down, you can change its rotation and such like with the angle here, but I think it's kind of okay as it is. Right, so other options, let's have a look. So we've got reflection, I'm not interested, custom, can't quite see it here, but that's where we've got our colours. So I've got 3 colours for my material here. Sorry, brain freeze. It's very blue and I want it to be more of a white t-shirt. So the bottom one, because it's the lightest colour, I'm going to move up and over towards white. There we go. Not pure white, but something near. And then this one I'm going to move towards grey. Somewhere around there, I think. And then the top one will move towards grey as well. Trying to keep the kind of proportional nature of the colour, you know, so that, you know, we have dark light, lighter light, you know, super light, but saying that, it just comes out grey then. So I can just adjust these colours up and down until I get a kind of effect I want. So let's make that lighter, and we'll make this one lighter as well, until you get to somewhere near what you want. I'm not quite there yet, I don't think. I might take a little bit of the colour out of that, bring it up, and this one, I'll just bring that up a little bit as well. You know, sometimes it gets to very subtle kind of adjustments. Right, let's take that down a little bit and have a look at what else we've got. We've got our channels, so it's going to use base, normal, roughness and metallic, and then technical parameters. We can, you know, make a few changes here. Yeah, if you know about substance, you might know about the normal intensity and the normal format, you know, OpenGL or DirectX, and, you know, your height ranges and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's a very basic texture, and that's fine. But the last little touch I want to do is put some stitches into this to make it really look like a piece of cloth. So we'll do that in the next section, and I'll talk to you then. Okay, so before we put some stitches in, I'm just going to go to the top stitch folder, and with the default top stitch selected, I'm going to make it much easier for me to see, because these could come in white as it is. Sorry, that's the texture. What I want is this one, and I'm going to just make them really dark to start with so that they really show up. Okay, so over here we have a few options. We have segment, free and seam line. I'm going to use the free, and then I'm just going to start where I want the stitch to start and end when I want the stitch to end. And when that's done, I should get a stitch, and it's kind of hard to see. A bit easier now I've got the black on it, but you'll see it's adding stitches. And if I go back to the stitch there, I can update this, I can change their length, and I could perhaps increase the thickness to make them more visible. And because that's the default top stitch, it's going to apply to everything that I do. It will apply to, you know, every stitch that I add on. Shall I change the space? Take it down a bit? No, I think it's alright. Okay, so that will have applied to both sides. Let's turn the texture off on this for the moment. There we go. Now it's really easy to see. And we'll do the arm. So again, you start at one end, you come down to the other, and then we need to do the other side of the arm, and then we'll finish off at the neckline. There we go, easy peasy, adding stitches. There are a few kind of options within the stitch. So as I said, you know, we've changed the length and the width, and you know, that's going to depend upon how visible you want it to be. You know, sometimes if it's too visible, you know, it looks cartoony, but if it's not visible enough, well, why have it there? You can't see it, so who cares? So let's go on to that edit there. So what else can we do? Well, we've got our texture down here and our opacity and our opacity map, reflection. You know, you can update, you know, the material for these. You could have them really shiny if you wanted to. You could have metal stitches if you were so inclined. But we also have a shape here, and we can change the shape to various different kinds of stitches. There we go, that's gone to the bar tack. It's changed my colour now because, you know, it's changed the style. But we have a buttonhole, an overlock, pick stitch, single, and then zigzag. So depending upon what you're doing, you might, you know, pick a different one. So let's go with single. I'll just update my values here. 3. Let's increase the distance and increase the thickness and give it some colour. Okay, so they look quite visible. Other options. There is another option I'm looking for, but I can't spot it at the moment. Number of lines. So what we could do is add additional lines of this. So I could have 2 lines of stitch or 3. You know, you could do all sorts of different things with it. So, you know, it's worth just having a look to see what you can do. And you can also change where the stitches go. You might decide that you want these stitches on the back of your garment, in which case they'll be on the back facing, you know, the normal in or the internal of the normal rather than on the external. Or you might decide you want them on both. You know, it's really dependent upon, you know, what you want. Okay, so I think that's enough. Let's put those back on the front and turn on our textured view and turn on our avatar, and there we have a reasonably nice, if plain, garment that we can export and use in other programs. Now I'm not going to continue this. To do that, I'm going to create a new one which will, you know, we'll use this vest project to prepare it for export it to Substance Painter, and then, you know, we'll make a texture in there. But for now we're going to end this off. I hope you found it useful, and, you know, I'll talk to you again in another video.